for our last summer session, and I was almost thinking last week of having a 1-week hiatus, but I think it's good that we all get together in any event. Can we start with a Pledge of Allegiance? And I don't know if you can see my picture, but I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
I have a comment about the wording and where we are today's world. It seems like indivisible is not being practiced.
It's an aspiration.
Well,
I thought you were going to complain about the under God.
yeah.
No, but I remember when it was not part of the pledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was done in the Eisenhower administration.
Yeah, 1954, I believe.
I don't remember the exact time, but I do recall it
would've
being there.
How do you like the DC?
On that same line, maybe our country is named wrong. United States. Maybe it should be the divided states.
Yeah, let's not.
Let's not talk that way.
That's
No,
later.
I know. He brought
Let's
it up.
not get into that right now. You know, a couple of items before we get into our discussion. I don't know. Is Phil Schechter on?
I thought so.
Phil, if you're there, give a shout.
Yeah, Phil's there, but you're muted, Phil.
I'm unmuted.
Now you're
Oh,
on
yeah.
mute.
Okay. We got a little, sad news. One of our members, Stephen John Rigo, passed away on last Friday. He was born in 1939. And bear with me, I'm trying to read the obituary. He was survived by his wife, Barbara, and his children. Steve graduated from Stamford High School in 1957. University of New Haven with a degree in mechanical engineering. Spent his working career at Pitney Bowes for 45 years. That's today, that is something unusual that anybody stays that long. What with companies going out of business and merging and what have you. After his career, he went into his accomplishment. He was proud of his accomplishment with the Lego robotics team, helping them to rise to international competition. He was known to all as Captain Propeller, wearing a silly propeller cap at all Lego competitions. He spent many years helping people deliver and serve at the New Covenant House Cafe and volunteering at St. Leo's Parish Fair. So let's have a moment of silence for our deceased member, Steve. I thank you. Does anybody? I did not know him. Actually, I don't remember him. But does anybody? Is there anybody here that knew him and would like to talk? Joe, yeah, St. Leo.
Yeah, I kind of remember Steve as being a friendly and a pleasant individual. I happened to coincidentally go to St. Leo's as well, and we got to know him there. And his wife, Barbara, and Steve, they're in an organization that we're members also. And every time we got together, we would chat a while. And I know he was very close to his grandchildren. Coincidentally, my wife actually taught a couple of his grandkids, and they would get into a conversation every once in a while. And I always kind of remember Steve as easy to talk to and just a very sociable guy. He will be missed.
Thank you, Joe.
This is Bob Meyer.
Yeah, Bob.
I'd like to say a couple words also. I also worked at Pitney Bowes, and that's where I met Steve. And that was actually, when I think about it, that was 60 years ago. So I first met him, as I say, about 60 years ago. He had a great hobby. He was an antique car enthusiast. And he actually owned 2 Model A Fords. One was a black pickup truck, and the other is a Woody station wagon. And I still remember seeing the pickup truck being driven down Bridge Street after the car show that was held at Wright Tech last year. So that was his big hobby. He was also a member of the Gateway Auto Club, which puts on the shows, the auto shows up in Norwalk in April of every year. And Steve used to do the announcing of the winners of the trophies for that show. And like Joe Racanello said, he was a great guy, very friendly, and we had a lot of good times together.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else would like to say anything? Okay. I don't have any other announcements.
Joe,
Yes, Stu.
I have good
Oh,
news.
Phil.
Yep, and if I could share my screen.
Should be able to, Phil.
It says host disabled attendee.
No, hold on. Let's go back here. Right now.
Okay. Did it come up? Well, anyway, there's a lovely picture of Bob Bubke, who was married, sorry about that, on Rogers Island in the Thimbles Island off of Branford, August 22nd, with a small group of family. It was a very special day. And then there's a picture I wish I could show you. I don't know how
Try
to.
it again. It says, I make sure it says allow participants to share a screen.
I guess you've done all you can do, Steve. And I can't, I don't know what else to do. But there's a lovely picture of the bride and the groom. It was a very windy day, and Bob Bubke has a lot more hair than I do. And it's very noticeable in this picture. It's a great picture. And that's it, Joe.
Congratulations to Bob. I'm sure we all wish him well, and he'll be probably coming back to a meeting soon. He's probably on his honeymoon. I know that they were planning on doing something. Stu Madison, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that on the meeting on September 17th, so that's a couple of weeks from now, we have reconfirmed that Mayor Martin will join us 10:45. And he'll talk about the state of the city of Stamford. And we're on his calendar, and Steve will probably end up sending the official invitation to him so he can join us. So everyone should be there, and hopefully we get a lot more guys.
Hopefully we will get back up to, I know during the year before the summer break, we were getting between 60 to 70 participants at our Zoom meeting. So hopefully we'll go back up to that number. Try and get, blast out. Steve will be sending out email blasts between now and then, and reminding everybody that our meeting will start at 10 again, but if we have a pre-meeting, it'll start at 9, we start them at 9:20, and then run right into our meeting at 10. Okay, without anything else, sir, before, we end the meeting, I might have to jump out. Next week, we're gonna have Shauna Turner, and Shauna was going to speak to us in the spring about spring cleaning, and lo and behold, COVID came, and so, the only thing you could do with your spring cleaning was dump it. Nobody was accepting anything, and it would have been difficult. I know a lot of us were doing something, my wife finally got the bug when she was feeling a little good, going, getting rid of a lot of stuff. So she's going to be speaking about tough to toss, which might be interesting. And, while we're still pretty much, we're not quarantined at home, but I know I just got my Google Maps timeline, and more than half the days my routing was 317 Intervale Road East. And when it wasn't at Intervale Road East, it was either at the Tully Health Center or Stamford Hospital, Area 2 building. So I think most of us are in that same predicament, minimal travel. So it should be interesting, and it'll be a good way to kick off the fall season for our speakers. So I hope to see everybody there, and if you see any of the members that haven't been attending the summer sessions, please remind them that we're back on in next week, and the format will be we will go through our regular business. Carl will probably set up the agenda. I don't know, Carl, are you on with us today?
Joe, Larry here. Just want to let you know, there'll be a 9:20 discussion led by Joe D next week on current events.
Good.
So that'll be the start.
Super. Okay, so our agenda will be like before. We'll have pledge the reports of the standing committees, and Larry is going to have a heck of a lot to say, but maybe in anticipation of good things to come. So maybe, any of our committee people, even, if you come up with some of your thoughts and a wish list of things to happen, we'll do that, and we'll set a date. All the members of the board probably want to have a date for a board meeting, probably right after the middle of the month. Okay, Ira.
Yeah, I need two things repeated. Number one, how do you spell Shauna's name?
Seana.
Okay, and repeat the topic for me.
Tough to toss.
Tough
to toss.
to talk. Larry, what was the pre-meeting going to be?
Joe D on current events.
Thank you. Okay, all my questions are answered.
Stu?
I just want to mention a thing that hit me this morning with something in the paper. A lot of us have grandchildren. Maybe during the summer, we've had the family over, we visited our grandkids. Probably while we're there without masks and things of that nature. But since school is starting now, the kids will be exposed to who we don't know who. So you might want to think about using masks even when you're visiting your close family. It's a different environment.
Excellent point. Thank you, Stu. I was thinking of the same thing when we had my son's birthday celebration Tuesday night, and my kids and the grandkids were over, and it was like 2 years ago. But all right. If there's no one else, as I was saying, we'll have our regular format, and then if there's any time between when we end and 10:45 when the speaker starts, unless the speaker is on a little earlier, and we'll have a little, we can have our mini discussion and go from there. Well, thankfully today, Art Feldman has volunteered to lead a discussion on the situation going on. I think Art, the topic was the economic and social aspects of what's going on. Brian, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I was just talking to my wife offline.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking to so, all right. So, Art, you want to take it away?
No.
Art left us. Where'd Art go?
I don't know.
He's not on.
Yeah, I don't see his.
He disappeared. That's weird.
That's weird.
Presumably he's coming back.
Oh, that's unusual.
Yeah.
Well,
What'd we say?
I'm sorry, Steve.
What'd we say that he decided to leave?
Maybe he pissed him off.
Stu must have said something wrong. I don't know.
Stop talking.
Pretty sensitive.
Yeah, I don't know. It's unusual. Was he on?
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was definitely on. He was a co-host.
I thought so.
Give him a minute. He might have just lost his connection.
Give him a couple minutes.
Well, I don't want to get into the discussion.
Well, it's Black Lives Matter, right? Whole topic.
Yeah, the economic and what was it? Economic and
Must be political.
repercussions, the political repercussions.
It was listed as a political and economic effect of BLM movement. That's what
Yeah.
posted.
So, well, let's get started. And when he comes back on, he can give us more direction. I don't know, just as a means of getting through. I think, one of the economic things that I see is, aside from the wanting to defund and divert funds from essential city and local services to other areas, one of the things that appears is that with the turmoil in the inner cities and throughout the country, businesses, small businesses, even large businesses that were hurt due to the COVID were, and I think are still being affected by the looting and the rioting and people fearing to go into those areas to do any marketing or shopping. So the businesses are continually, instead of trying to work out of the COVID situation, are getting hit with all the rioting and looting, which is definitely having an economic impact in many respects. So anybody want to comment on that? Kick it off with that. Lloyd.
Yes, I'll give you a little background, what I remember. I mean, obviously I didn't prepare for this. Black Lives Matter was originally a Marxist type of organization that said that the government should control everything. It was anti-Semitic attitude and anti-Catholic Church also, by that matter. And it was changed in the last year or so. And now it became a focal point because of police incidents against Black people. Although in retrospect, it should have really encompassed all Black killings which occurs in all the major cities.
Black on black.
And then it became politicized. The big city mayors took advantage of this outpouring, and people were cooped up also, for that matter, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this was an opportunity for them to disregard all the government regulations about, if they wanted to, social distancing, masks, whatnot, and they all can get together by the hundreds. And this is like an outpouring of frustration and being cooped up for such a long time. Now, had a lot of energy and they had no way of dissipating it. So I think that's somewhat a background. Of course, it's not a polished background like art would present.
Thanks, Lloyd. Ed, roll off.
Yeah. The idea of defunding the police has been sidetracked in how it's being reported now and how it's being presented, I believe, because originally they were talking about taking from the police the jobs that has been assigned to them that really belong to other agencies within the city government and providing funding to those agencies, like for child services, for mental health, and so on. There was an article in the paper the other day that talked about some town was passing all of the needs for school discipline onto the police department. They were calling the police to say, we've got a student here who's disrupting classes or whatever, and calling the police to come arrest them, so to speak, and take them out of the school. The idea that the police should be spending their time doing things like that instead of patrolling and crime and investigation or whatever is actually a pretty decent idea if it's practiced properly and if it's presented properly.
Ed, if I think most of us remember back, one of the major reasons why we had they ended up putting police into the schools was the fact that a lot of, excuse the expression, shit was going on in the schools that never got reported. Criminal acts, drugs, assaults on students and whatnot, and the schools swept it under the rug. They didn't want to bring out this all the bad stuff, And they got to the point where they weren't reporting anything, and the outcry from the public was to have police in the schools so that this stuff would be reported and would be stopped as it was going on. So, you know, the pendulum always swings to the right and to the left. You can't have your cake and eat it. And you know, now that they've gotten to rely on the police being there, they're demanding more of the what was the school resource officer, especially in some of the more problematic schools. So, I mean, that I guess some of the teachers and educators in the group might disagree with me or agree with me, whatever the case is, but.
You know, one Sandy Hook incident that, you know, added, you know, a security function to that officer's job.
Yeah. Well, Sandy Hook was, well, even preceding Sandy Hook was some of the stuff that was going on out west in Colorado and some of the other areas that.
Columbine.
Yeah.
Right. Anybody else have want to comment? Again, raise the blue hand. It's, yeah, Lloyd, good.
You know, one thing you have to remember, a lot of the police injuries and fatalities is because they go into homes where there's domestic violence. More than anything, I think more than anything else, there's occasional ambushes and this and that. But basically, one of the big problems the police have is when they go into a domestic violence situation. Everybody's adrenaline is way up, and a lot of times they find armed confrontation. Now, the theory was that you send in a social worker. Now, an unarmed social worker against a hopped up, charged up domestic violence situation, right, doesn't put the social worker in a very good position. In fact, it doesn't even bring an armed policeman in a good position either. And I don't think that that theory is really going to work out too well, because you know, you read about almost weekly some circumstance where police responded to a domestic violence situation. Policeman gets shot, killed, and whatnot. And I don't think that's a societal answer to just defund the police to provide more social workers. Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Let me shut that off.
Brian.
Oh, what is this?
Yeah, I would argue that what the left wants to do is bring that social worker in first to domestic violence situations, because nobody's equipped for that. You have to really know what you're doing, and then have the police backup, which makes all kinds of sense. Don't make the policeman do what he can't do. That's all that defunding the police is about. Let the other guys come in as the first line of defense, and you have the police as a second line of defense.
Teachers are unable to deal with. So now we're pushing it again. We're putting more layers in between.
Bill Johnson.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump off and try and give Art a call. So I'm gonna mute myself. Steve, you wanna? Well, Larry, you wanna?
Bill Johnson wanted to say something.
Yeah. I just want to comment that I was deeply involved in child abuse prevention. And matter of fact, when we started a center here in Stamford back in 1989, our social worker, our only employee at the time, would go into the homes of abused children And I remember one time that she was called to go into Southfield Village. And when she rang the doorbell, she was met with a man with a shotgun. Now, hell, I would have peed in my pants right then and there, you know, gotten out. But she talked her way out of it, called the police. The police came and took the guy out. And, you know, the state took over the abused children. But that type of thing just doesn't work out, to have the social workers go in. You don't know when that's going to happen. Usually it did not happen, but in that case it did. So I don't know what, we have never solved that problem. We still have aides that go into abused children's homes to try to help them. And what we usually find is it's the parent problem, not, yeah, it's nothing but the problem. And I think that our problem is never going to be solved by defunding the police or any of that. We have to recognize that our problem is in the family itself. And when you get into the poverty areas in the large cities, you just don't, there's no way to solve that problem that anybody knows today, I don't think. That's it.
I'll just make one point, and I guess it's when you talk about, you know, the problem within the family, and I guess this is one thing that I find problematic in, let's say, the Black Lives Matter movement, is they espouse a non-nuclear family. They support a non-nuclear family, which from some of the things I've read has been part of the problem that has evolved over the last 20 or 30 years. And in the Black environment, the number of households with two parents apparently has decreased. And I think that may be part of the problem that exists.
Well, that's a big part of it. Big part.
And the Black Lives Matter, if you read their I won't call it their manifesto, but their website espouses that, you know, just a non-nuclear family. They may have a point in that they have to deal with it, but how do you get back to something more supportive of a...
Well, I'm sure that some of you guys know this really stems back to the civil rights movement back in the 60s. And one of the ways to solve the problems at that time was to pay people and give them remuneration for based on the number of children they had. A lot of women don't like husbands. I don't know whether you've noticed that or not. There is they can really do without us, you know, almost. And the women found that they could not have a husband and have the children and have the government taking care of them. And there again, in the attempt to help the poverty situation, we really moved it a little bit too far for us. So we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, particularly in the inner city. It's almost impossible to straighten it out now.
One of the things, you know, you wonder, certain organizations, where they're coming from and what their main motive is. I mean, when you see Black Lives Matter as the one in particular, and you look at the people that are protesting, I think there are more whites than blacks in the protest. which lets me to believe, who's, what are they really after? I just read in one of the articles that one of the areas in Chicago, the residents of the areas are telling them to stay the hell away because they're creating more problems and strife in the area. So they're not really representing the people in that particular area. And something else that I just saw on, and this is something else that, in Portland, Oregon, one of the, some group was showing a caravan of pickup trucks and cars and saying, order is, they're going to restore order. The help is coming. And it was, I don't know if they're militia or who organized it, but it looked like a hell of a lot of trucks and cars driving into the city of Portland, which, regardless, I don't care what side you're on, right, left, middle, or anything else. It's a sad, sad commentary on what's going on. And when the people in charge of the localities abrogate their responsibilities, you're going to have probably more of this happening, and it's really a sad state. I mean, going back to handcuffing the police. I don't espouse some of the tactics that they used years ago to break up riots. I remember, back in the 50s and early 60s when the street gangs were active in New York City. The cops didn't use violence. They just blocked off the streets and had the two gangs going, before they knew it, they were going in opposite directions, and they ended up leading one group to the Hudson River and one group to the East River, and stopped any rioting. Although, of course, in those days, none of these gangs, some of them as tough as they were going to start beating up on the cops. So they just followed where the cops directed them to go, and they couldn't go back. They could only go right, left, or forward where they were directed, and they directed them away from it. Now, whether that was, non-violent, but would that happen? The question is, would that happen today with the let's call them the gangs that are active? You saw at the convention, Ron Paul being, if those cops weren't there, what would have happened to Ron Paul? A priest was out, or a minister, I don't know if it was a priest or a minister, but he had a collar on and walking a dog, and he was beat up by these groups outside. So, where do you draw the line? You don't want to see anything like that happening, but it is happening today, and it's a sad state. And I believe it's because the abrogation of the responsibility of our leaders. Lloyd,
I'd like to say something, if I may. I think you need a little historical perspective on the Great Society program that President Johnson promulgated in the middle of the Vietnam War.
No relation.
Anyway, very good, very good. Touche. And I think the problem was that the idea was great. It broke up the race riots, and it was a good idea to support the families. Unfortunately, in its administration, the bureaucrats decided that it was going to be total family income. And that led to the dissolution of the nuclear family. Because and the idea is that, like Bill said, the more children you got, the more you got. And that was pretty much stopped during Bill Clinton's administration. But I think the problem we got, and a lot of times, is sits in Congress. Congress makes the laws, and the bureaucrats try to interpret it, and it has untold consequences. We see that in this Great Society program. We see that in housing, where the housing bubble was promulgated by the Congress that said, oh, everybody's got to own a home. And once that rule came out, everybody got a home. And even though you couldn't afford the payment, but that didn't matter, you got a home. And we had the housing bubble, 2008, 2009, and it's aftermath afterwards. So, a problem we have is we don't have a legislature that's functioning. You have 500 and some odd people. They're all articulating their viewpoints, collecting money, and most of them are running all the time. I mean, when you get elected to the House of Representatives, you've got 2 years to get your war chest for the next election. So you spend 2 years doing that. And the senator, you got 6 years, but that's okay. But, unfortunately, we don't have any more legislators that you could depend on. Occasionally, they come across with a good law, and that works out well. But that's occasionally, and not the routine. Right? This is, I think, one of the underlying reasons for most of our problems in this country, and of democracy as we practice it.
I just tried to call Art Feldman, and the phone went directly to voicemail, so I don't know, maybe something's up. Anyway, go ahead. Dick Harper, yeah.
One of the things that we probably need to think about is the whole stream of incidents in which police have been involved, and somehow somebody ends up dead. And in many of these cases, it's after a confrontation between the police and an individual for a number of minutes. In some cases, it was well over half an hour. And then the public responds to that and asks questions. How come the police handled it that way, and what is going on when you have a string of these over the last 10 years, and each time one of those takes place, there's then a so-called eruption where lots of people start gathering in that town, and in some cases we have it across the country. So there's a really deep issue there that we all have to grapple with. And it's not an easy issue, because you do want the police to enforce the law, but you don't want people to end up being dead when they really haven't been engaged in any kind of violence against individuals. And if they've broken the law, they can be arrested, but ending up being dead is a whole different issue.
Can I ask you a question?
Well, I'm just trying to put a background out there of, we have to kind of think about all those incidents and what they add up to.
Well, I was just...
And how we can, how we need to respond to them, and whether it raises an issue for the whole country. When you look at against the background of this many things happening over a relatively short period of time.
The question that I would raise, you're absolutely right in what you're saying, first of all, but it just seems to me to be terribly coincidental that these are happening in one way, slanted negative to the police. And there's always seems to be somebody there taking a video that shows the negative portion primarily. And you know, coincidence, I don't believe in them. You know, there's too many of them. You know, one or two, fine, but there's just too many, and there has to be something at the base that we're all missing here, and I don't know what it is.
So we can all say that the person at the root of all this problem is Steve Jobs for inventing the iPhone with a camera.
Maybe.
It's cool.
Yeah,
All this time, I thought it was Dick Tracy that invented that.
All right, Ed, roll off. Let's get back to raising the blue hand. Eddie.
The one thing that's missing and seems to be a common thread through all of this is that when a police officer says to you, stay in your car. This incident happened to a friend of mine who was broadsided in the car, was not seriously hurt, but he wanted to know what was going on as the police officer was talking to the guy that hit him. And the cop turned around and told him, get back in your car and stay there. And if you don't get back, and he wouldn't go back in. He wanted to know what was going on. And he said, if you don't go back in, I'm going to arrest you. If you do not follow a police officer's instructions, which he ultimately did because he did not want to get arrested, you know, that starts the cop off in a wonderful mood. And, you know, he's doing it because he doesn't know where that situation is going to go. And he doesn't want somebody getting hurt or himself or whatever. For whatever reason, he says, stop, you should stop. Don't run away. You know, things like that. I think that's part of the problem, that people do not follow simple commands from a police officer, from those who have authority to do something like that. That's a starting point for a lot of these incidents. Not all of them are not pure, but nevertheless, I believe that to be the starting point for all of these incidents.
Yeah, if you look at some of the incidents that have occurred where you say, gee, if they would only listen when they said stay there or don't move or, you know, put your hands up on the roof or whatever the case is, and they end up getting shot or you know, beaten, whatever the case is, you look at the fact that a lot of them have previous warrants out and they don't want to stop and get there. They want to try and get away because they have warrants out on themselves. And that I don't know if that's the situation or if that's the setup, as somebody alluded to, but you know, Joel.
It's more than just that some of these victims have a record that they're trying to hide from. They're trying to hide from the police generally. The concept of Black Lives Matter is that the cops have been, not just the cops, all of society has been discriminating against these folks for so many years that they're afraid that they're going to get shot if there's any interaction with a cop. So it's fight or flight. They try to get away from the cop, no matter what the cop is saying. Stop, put your hands on the car. A bad police record or not, they are taught to get away from the cops. They're afraid to be gunned down.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, that definitely is why they're trying to get away, is because we'll either get gunned down or go back into prison, whatever the case is. But you know, it's still the fact that they're resisting, and the consequences are not generally going to work out to the best. Lloyd, you got your hand raised.
Yes. Let me shut it off first. Oh, okay. I think there's another aspect of this. I think fundamentally, it goes back to our culture that started in, the change started in the 60s, so-called college revolution that took place, where authority was challenged and dismissed. It started out in the colleges, as I remember, and where they would occupy administration buildings, force the president of the university to change some rule or another. And that started the breakdown of official respect for authority. And we see it now. I mean, you have these protesters. Yeah, some of them are very peaceful and they obey the civil authorities. Others turn out to be, they disregard it. It doesn't matter. They set up what they call the City of Love, or the Summer of Love in Seattle, and Occupy Wall Street not that many years ago. And unfortunately, this is the society that we're living in. And unless we change our cultural attitudes, this is going to get worse, because anarchy is the most easiest form of government to have.
Bill Johnson.
Yeah, Lloyd, I think you're right, but the question is that I have is this a fault of our school system? Have we stopped teaching civics? You know, in the 8th grade, I remember at Albuquerque, New Mexico, I was taught in the 8th grade about respect for the police, et cetera, et cetera. And we believed it when our teachers talked. And I'm just wondering whether we even talk this anymore in school. I know that on Veterans Day now, we take it off. There's no school. Instead of staying there and teaching the kids that war is bad. I don't know, what do you do here? I mean, is there something we are doing wrong in our school systems? I guess is my question.
The answer to that is the schools now are essentially amoral. They're teaching the hard curriculum, but they're not giving any, the civics, as you pointed out. They're not saying that it's right or wrong to do something. It's allowing, there's no repercussion as to why. If a kid takes a pencil, it's because he needs it, and the fact that the other kid is going to do without the pencil doesn't mean anything. Larry, you got your hand up?
Yeah, to Lloyd's point, if you as an individual or a group of like-minded people think that there is something wrong with a law or a policy, I mean, how do you go about trying to get it changed or, avoided? There's got to be a way. There's peaceful protest is certainly a viable form of activity. But, what happens is you know, in the case of Students for a Democratic Society, I guess was in the 60s, they might have gone about it a little more vehemently than might have been the correct way of doing it. But how do you get change occurring?
Voting. Voting in.
Dick Harper, please press the blue button. Your picture just came up on my screen, and I'm looking at.
Can't find the blue button. That's the problem. Where is the blue button?
Raise hand.
Where? I
On
don't.
the bottom of your.
Press on participants.
Participants at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because I can't see everybody all at one time, so you know your picture finally came on screen. You know.
Okay.
It
Now,
scrolled, so.
I just pushed on participants. Does that show?
Now you gotta raise hand.
Okay.
Blue button on the
Lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, I don't see any blue button. That's why. But anyhow, the schools, by mandate in the state of Connecticut, teach at least half a year of what you would call civics in the 9th grade. And
A little late.
that, they've been doing it for years, because I started teaching in 1956 and taught courses having to do with that, and then whatever schools I were in all the time were teaching that sometimes was called government, or usually was in 9th grade.
9th grade, but I remember going to school and we were taught that from kindergarten, that, you know, you respected the other people in the class and what was right, what was wrong.
That's still true, Joe.
What happens now is that parents over the last 30 or 40 years, when a teacher would tell a kid they're doing something wrong, the parents, and this is from experience because I knew some of the parents that were pulling this crap, would go to the school and tell the administrators and the teacher, who are you to tell my kid what's right and wrong? So as a consequence, enough of that, they stopped telling kids what was right and wrong.
No, that's not true.
It's
And I was interrupted, but as I was making the point that the schools have been working very hard for all those years, trying to raise students who are healthy, who understand the political obligations that they have, who understand their social obligations. And it's a job that teachers take very seriously, because I've worked with teachers for a long time.
Well, when the teachers got reprimanded from their administrators that they should not be telling kids what's right and wrong, then there's a disconnect somewhere.
I never heard that, ever.
Well,
Well, it used to be if you brought a note home from the teacher,
So he doesn't.
you wound up with a wallop from your parents because you misbehaved in class or did something wrong, right?
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Your parents sided with the teacher, not with you. And that's, you know, that taught you immediately that I'm not going to do that again. Because it wasn't too pleasant.
Lloyd, you got your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to introduce something else that's happening. It's called the 1619 Project, which was promulgated by the New York Times, saying that the United States is nothing but a racist country and white supremacists rule the country, et cetera, et cetera. And that is going to be the new curriculum that Black Lives Matter want to introduce into our educational system. If that happens, then you find that the all our historical figures will be removed. And this just happened yesterday. The in the District of Columbia, they had a 6-week study on what statues should be removed because they're offensive to the general population. And they found out that George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and I think Ben Franklin got a pass. He needs further study. This is getting
All right.
crazy. We want to remove all our history completely.
Well,
Society.
that's, what's going to come is not, but I think it's 11 o'clock, and I want to thank everyone that participated during these last 2 months. I think, having these little sessions, the 25 to 35 guys that would come on, at least it gave us a chance to get together and spend an hour a week and see that we're all okay. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody next week for our first general meeting, and move on from there. Again, thank you guys for being here all summer long.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, for setting it up.
Okay.
Everybody have a good Labor Day.
The meeting is ending.
All right.